Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Kaufman. Welcome to our 141st installment of the Torah portion of the week. We are holding by Parshas Ekev. Ekev has quite a bit of interesting things about it. It talks about the reward for keeping Torah, God's assurance for people, that keep Torah, that do what He wants. We see that it's also a warning against the lure of prosperity, which we've spoken about. Remember the exodus from Egypt. There's a lot here. But the Torah says, chapter 10, verse 17. Torah says over here, for Hashem your God, He is the God of the powers, and the Lord of the hosts, the great, mighty, and awesome God, who does not show favor, who does not accept a bribe. Alright, so you can't bribe God. You cannot. The whole question why you would think that you should be able to bribe Him. Right? It says Mori Rebbe Arav Agon Moshe Machlita should be well. And he mentions, or he speaks about it in Tam Vadas, in his book on Chumash. And he's what kind of shochat we're talking about. What kind of bribery are we talking about by God? By a human being, I understand. Right? When we speak about rabbinic court judges, and it says the Torah says don't take a bribe. Who's it talking about? It's talking about them. So that I understand. Humans can take bribes. What about God? Right? What's the connection? So Rebbe points out that people think that they can be lenient in certain mitzvahs. Right? They'll say, well, God's going to understand. And they can be lenient and bring down certain barriers in order to be Mekarev Rechoikim, in order to do Jewish outreach. In other words, we're going to flesh this out, but in general, they'll think I can do what I want for the sake of outreach. And God's going to understand, because the person's going to say, look, I did everything in my power to bring someone closer. Yeah, I relied on certain leniencies, this, that. Maybe I shouldn't have. But look at the end result. I brought people closer. The Rebbe says no. Even though it's a great thing to bring people back to Torah, nonetheless, there's a way to do it. Right? You're not allowed to cut corners. You're not allowed to do whatever you want. So he says people make a mistake and think for the sake of Kiruv, for the sake of doing Jewish outreach, everything's permissible. But the Torah testifies, no. That you're not allowed to take a bribe. You're not allowed to try and bribe God. Because you're going to show Him how great is the mitzvah of Kiruv v'choikim. Look what you're willing to do to bring someone back. He says, God forbid a person should be that way and hold this as an ideal. Because at the end of the day, if a person is going to bring sacrifices, right? He wants to bring sacrifices to the temple, but he himself is not going to keep the Torah. What's the point of the sacrifices? So we're not allowed to move 1 inch from the Torah. And you can't bribe God, so to speak, and say, well, look at this great mitzvah I'm doing. Since I'm doing this great mitzvah of bringing your children back to Torah observance, then I can do whatever I want. And by doing whatever I want, it's okay. God, you should understand, for a very simple reason, I'm bringing these people back. So says Mori Rebbe, not true. Got to remember that we're not allowed to move from the Torah. We have to have proper Das Torah. We have to have our rabbinical authorities who we go to when we have questions. So this is a interesting thing that I've certainly seen over the years. My own experience, and I do speak about this, a lot, but I want to make sure the point is made. Right? And that is one very simple thing. Not so simple, otherwise, wouldn't speak so long about it. But there's a general idea. The mitzvah to bring people back, to do Jewish outreach. Right? Kol Yisrael Revim Zelazet. Talmud tells us, all Jews are responsible one for the other. So if a person has the ability to have some people for Shabbos, or he's able to give class, they're able to give classes, draw people closer, whatever the case is, there's a big mitzvah to do so. Right? God gives everybody their own tchuna, their own ability, right? Their own good things that they know how to do, that they have talent. Right? So there are people out there, right? Plenty of people out there who have plenty of talent to draw Jews closer to Judaism. So Rabbi says that's great, but there are parameters. Right? There are certain parameters that a person is not allowed to go outside of. Because once you go outside those parameters, it's not Torah anymore. So we have to draw someone closer in the way that the Torah prescribes. Not the way I think. And not only that, I'm not allowed to just do anything for the sake of Jewish outreach. Because my Rebbe here points out, and again, we'll go into more detail, that if you're going to do it, you have to do it in the proper way. You have to do it in the proper framework. You cannot bribe God, so to speak, and say, listen, I'm bringing your children back. You're going to cut me some slack. Why are you going to cut me some slack? Because I'm doing this great mitzvah. So the story with a pilot during World War II that was religious. It was in England, and every day he would go and bomb different places, in Germany. It was very dangerous missions. So he had a connection to Rav Cheskel Abramsky, Zecher Tzadik Levracha. He was the Av Beis Din, the head of the Beis Din, of the London Beis Din, many years ago, right? Many years ago, was one of the Torah giants of the generation. And he asked this person, how's he doing? Right? How's this pilot that he had a connection to? How you doing? How's your mitzvah observance? So the pilot said, you should know that, even though I keep Shabbos, one thing I can't give up is smoking on Shabbos. So the pilot said to Rabbi Abramsky, I know it's a transgression, and I know it's a serious transgression on Shabbos, but in the end, God's going to look the other way. God's going to cut me some slack. So Rabbi Heskel Abramsky said, what do you mean? And why is he going to cut you some slack? So he said, every day I go on these dangerous missions. God knows the unbelievable sacrifice I'm giving to fight. So God's going to look the other way. So Rabbi Heskel Abramsky told him that there's no question you get unbelievable merit for what you're doing. Right? That is for sure. But there's no bribing God over here. God's not going to say, well, I'm going to let you transgress Shabbos because I understand how important these missions are. And I understand the self-sacrifice and the danger. God's not going to say that. God's going to say, yeah, you'll get merit for that self-sacrifice. But in the end, you're going to have to pay the price for transgressing Shabbos. There's no bribery over here. Person has to realize, we mentioned this many times, person has to know that the Torah is true, I have to keep it, and I'm going to have to pay the piper later for my transgressions. Now, obviously, God has compassion. Depends on how a person transgressed, where they're holding, right? Not where they're going in the future, where they're holding now. So that's all good. But at the same time, it can't be, I want to do what I want. And God's going to do this or do that. Not true. God knows the thoughts of men. God understands where we're coming from. Yeah, God's going to have compassion. But if a person transgresses, one thing cannot offset something else. You cannot play one thing off the other. You can't say, wow, God's going to understand this, so if I transgress over here, I'm okay. Right? It's not true. Each thing is going to get judged by itself. So, in our case, person wants to do outreach, wants to do Jewish outreach, you got to do it in a certain way. You have to do it in the way that's permitted. You can't just do whatever you want. Say, wow, God's going to understand. There's this huge mitzvah. I'm bringing his children back. I'm doing amazing things and God is helping me. That's all true. Well, why in the world should he look the other way? Especially if you think you're doing the right thing, but there's no basis in Torah. Like a story that I know of, somebody, we'll call him a rabbi for lack of a better term, right? But a person shouldn't respect this person in any way, shape, or form when you hear the following story. So it was before Purim, and in a certain place, there were yeshiva students coming back from learning all winter. And this person, rabbi of a synagogue, was making a Purim party. Okay, what's the problem? So he's making it in a certain place. There are going to be Jews there, mostly secular Jews, men and women. Be a lot of intermingling there, but, it's a Purim party. I'm sure there was liquor flowing, etc. But he has this party under, a Jewish pretense, meaning celebration of Purim. So maybe there'll be, words of Torah there or whatever. But he's bringing people together, etc. So it's not a bad thing per se. I mean, some people say, doing things mixed, whatever. You have no choice. Right? Dealing with college students, young professionals, of course you have to have it mixed. Not, they're not going to come if it's separate. Not as fun, I'm sure. So what does this person say? So this person said, well, these yeshiva students, spent the last 6 months, learning Torah very strongly, working on character development, etc. And he said, what would be a great idea? A great idea would be bring these yeshiva students to this. I mean, it was basically in a pub, right, as far as I remember. And we're going to bring them to this pub, and they'll have an influence over everyone else. Right? We'll do it for the sake of Kiruv, for the sake of Jewish outreach. Right? They'll strengthen what's going on over there. They'll help them out. Now, what's the problem with this picture? Here you have yeshiva students, right, working very hard on themselves, trying to learn at a high level, doing God's will. What in the world should they be? Why should they be at a pub? Purim at night. A lot of things going on there. Again, I'm not saying per se this type of party is forbidden. Right? Who are you attracting? That's the whole point. Is you're attracting these people. You can bring them in. Try and work with them. But someone who's already holding at a different level, you're not going to tempt them. Why in the world would you say that it's okay to bring them? I say, what do you mean? It's for the sake of Kiruv. It's for the sake of Jewish outreach. They're going to help. So I would say, as much as you think they're going to help, they're going to get influenced the other way. Everything they worked for those previous 4 or 5 months gets flushed down the toilet in one night. But shouldn't it be permissible for Kiruv? You're putting them in a no-win situation. There's men there, there's women there, there's liquor. Bad news. If a person's already secular, it's one thing. If a person's religious, what in the world are you doing there? And why should, quote unquote, this rabbi, even if he looks Orthodox, say that it's permissible? and say that it's a good thing. So another rabbi comes along and says, listen, I want to know who your Das Torah is, who your rabbinical authority is that says this is okay. Because if I hear a clear-cut thing from him, I'll make up a sign, plaster it all over the place, plaster on the door of my synagogue, and everything is good. Show me where anybody says that's okay. That was the beginning. That was the end of that story. The person didn't produce, obviously. Because no one in their right mind is going to say that's okay. But you'll say, for the sake of Kiruv, for the sake of Jewish outreach, isn't that a good thing? You're bringing people back. Yeah, but there's a limit to what you can do. You know, again, it's one thing having a mixed crowd, and you're having liquor, whatever, put a Jewish theme to it, but you draw people in, I get it, makes sense. They come to something Jewish, then you get them to come to something other, some other event, I understand. But why are you going to put a stumbling block in front of yeshiva students and tell them that's okay? That doesn't make any sense. So when this person was put in a corner and said, produce your source who says it's okay, the person came out swinging. That was it. Got no proof. You're a fraud. Use your credentials, whatever they may be. You can't just do what you want. That's not what the Torah is. So you tell me, but we're living in dire straits today. We're losing tens of thousands a year to intermarriage and assimilation. True. So you say we have to do whatever it takes to bring them back. Not true. We do what we can. But you can't turn the Torah into a pretzel. You have to have proper rabbinic guidance. This person obviously didn't have. Pretty obvious. Because then they'll say, oh, what do you know? There's that. I try and make you feel like a piece of dirt when you're confronting them and saying, what are you doing? How can you do such a thing? Where's your integrity? You don't know anything about Kiruv. You don't know anything about drawing people close. This is what you got to do. That could be. But you want to put a stumbling block in front of others to do it? Who says that's okay? And if one of these people goes sour, or has tremendous, trials through this, you ruin them. You're going to pay for that the rest of your life. Right? Because you caused them to go astray. Yeah, God's going to look the other way. God's going to look at my track record and see, look at all the good things I'm doing. Look how beneficial I am to the Jewish people. But he's doing what he wants. Not according to what the Torah wants. Again, end result, how many people come to your classes, how many hits you have on your website, it's all superficial. It's not about numbers. The Kiruv world it is, but it's really not all about numbers, it's about quality. Right? I would rather have 10 times less students, but the students that I have are strong as fire. And they know you don't compromise. And they know there's a right way and there's a wrong way. And they know that there are Mickey Mouse rabbis out there, even if they're Orthodox, doing what they want, calling it all kinds of things. So that we have to be careful. In other circumstances, you have other Kiruv things going on. And you put people in places where they would normally go, and you also go. Would there be an issue going to a ball game, going to a hockey game, whatever? You have somewhat of a Jewish theme before. Okay, then you go to the gladiators. You're going to say, well, these people would go anyway, so if I go, it's like I'm strengthening my connection to them. Right? So that's the fundamental question in Kiruv. Now the question is, do I bring them to me on my turf? or do I have to go to them? Now, it could be you might have to do both. But on a college campus, for instance, there are many couples that go on college campuses. They usually have little kids, so it's not really such an issue. But they go in the trenches. They're in the middle of Sodom and Gomorrah. But that's how they get to college, to Jewish college students, and how to bring them in. It's not an easy thing. There is a method to the madness. It does make sense. But that's the question. Are you going to have more influence on them or vice versa? So even if you're on campus, you're trying to reach people, they're coming to you. They're coming to your turf, to your house. The question is, what does your house look like? Does your house look like a college campus, or does it look like a makom Torah? Right? The place to learn, the place to eat, to, sanctify God's name, make blessings, etc. So what you're doing is you're not necessarily going to them. Right? They have to come to you. Now, obviously, you have to make it user-friendly. Right? You have to make it in a way people are going to want to come. People are going to be interested. Right? So you have to be innovative. You certainly have to be innovative. Certainly on college campuses, other things, it's not easy to draw people. Like people sort of want to hide from Judaism. Not so interested in Judaism. But there are ways. There are ways to do that. But again, it's the age-old question. Am I going to have more of an influence on them or vice versa? So if they're coming to me, and they're coming to my quote-unquote insulated environment, I have the upper hand. Because they're coming to me. I'm not going to them. Now, it could be them coming to you, and who knows what conversations come up, and this and that. You got to be careful for your kids. That's true. That's definitely true. On the other hand, when your kids see what these, what these people come with, and the baggage that they have, etc., kids aren't impressed. They say, why would they do that? Why would they do this? Sometimes can there be a negative influence? Yes. All right, the person has to know his kids, has to know his family. You have to know how to deal with it. But you're much stronger on safer territory. Again, it doesn't mean sometimes you may have to go to them for certain things. Right? To their environment, maybe. Right? Famous story. Rabbi Grossman here in Migdal Emek, right? Known as Disco Rabbi. I'd walk into pubs, walk into discos. Trying to get Jewish youth to learn about Torah. Right? A little bit out there. But he's got the respect of just about everybody. And what he's done, how he's changed people's lives. Would you send most people, most quote-unquote rabbis, into a disco? I don't think so. Certainly not the norm. I'm sure when he was doing it, people thought he was crazy. Totally out of the norm. A tremendous amount of success. But he didn't compromise the standards. You'll say, okay, he was in a disco. You're right. But the standards didn't change. He came with a certain agenda, didn't move from it. And then he brought them to him. Would I say that's a good thing for the masses doing outreach? No. Not recommended at all. But in the end, he was successful. Now, did it affect him in a negative way? Only he can answer. Would he tell people this is the right way to do it? I don't think so. I'm guessing there. I certainly don't know him personally. But I would venture to say he's not going to tell people to do it. That's not the norm. But sometimes you have to go to an extreme. But you have to have Das Torah to do it. You have to have a rabbi that you go to, that you ask your questions and would say, listen, can I do this? Is it okay? What are the parameters? What are the boundaries? Can't make decisions on your own. You have to have proper guidance. The problem is, a lot of these people think they don't need guidance. They think, okay, I already have rabbinic ordination. I already passed my exams. I can do what I want. I know enough. I can answer for myself. Not so sure about that. But really, you're going to ask your rabbi for everything? You got to know when there's a question to be asked. You have to know. You have to know what the issues are involved. You have to know when it's beyond you. When it's something that, looks, as we would say, as the English would say, it looks a little bit dodgy. So something like that, you got to ask, am I allowed to do this? Is it halachically permissible? And if you get an answer that's no, okay, so you got to try something else. Right, do it in a different way, whatever the case is. But you can't just do what you want. Doesn't matter what you call yourself. You have to ask proper rabbinical authority. Sometimes, there may be something to lean on. It might be a leniency that really nobody should use. But in this case, okay. You might be able to use it. Maybe yes, maybe no. But you can't just decide on your own. You can't think, well, I know better. I understand. I should be able to do this. Go back to the Purim party. Is there any rabbinical authority out there worth their weight, worth their reputation that's going to say that's okay, what this person wanted to do with these yeshiva students? No. Meaning that, maybe tell me they're more, there are more modern people who say it's okay. Reform and conservative might say it's okay. Then what's the problem? So let them intermingle. Let them help out. Let them draw people. But again, any rabbi worth their weight in anything, no one is ever going to permit such a thing. Nobody. So the intentions, I'm not saying are bad, per se. They're misguided. I understand what was behind it. But you have to have eyes in the back of your head and the front of your head as well. Is this something that's going to be good for them? It might be good for you. It might somewhat help you in some ways. But you might destroy them in the process. So how in the world can you say that's a good thing? Doesn't make any sense. I mean, it does to a certain extent, but if your feet are planted in the frum world, right, in the ultra-Orthodox world, not a question here. You'll say you do whatever it takes. Not true. You don't put yourself in the dirt to bring someone else out. Because when you do that, you also get dirty in the process. You're also affected in a negative way. So you have to have boundaries. There have to be boundaries of what you can do, what you can't do. Right? But most people you ask, they'll say, why can't I do this? Or why can't I do that? We're living in desperate times. I agree. Messiah's right around the corner, knocking on the door. 95% of the Jewish people are going to get, are going to be demolished. Because they're already being demolished spiritually, so there'll be nothing left of them. So I understand we try and bring whoever we can back. Makes a lot of sense. But at whose expense? At whose expense should I do that? Families can get destroyed because of it, if you're not careful. There have to be boundaries. There have to be parameters. As my Rebbe said over here, you cannot bribe God by saying, look at all the goodness that I'm doing. Look how many people I'm saving, if I'm not doing it in the right way. If I'm compromising where I should never compromise. Nobody says that's permissible. If there's a leniency, your rabbi gives you permission to rely on it, whatever, even though it's not the greatest thing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it's one thing. Person's got to have broad shoulders over here. But if you live in the middle of nowhere, you don't have to take responsibility, per se. You don't have to go ask somebody because you're in the middle of nowhere, no one's watching you. Right, there's no strong Jewish community there, blah, blah, blah. I can do what I want. I have to ask rabbinic authority. I'm the rabbinical authority here. I make the rules here. That's called success. Listen, they may be successful. No doubt about it. But we live in what we call a Lamed Shikra. We live in a false world. You know, that the people who are successful and have power today, you know, they're not going to be smelling so good in the next world. It's not about numbers. It's about integrity. This generation, as long as they stay away from evil, that's good. But you have to have integrity. If you're a rabbinic authority, you're a leader of a community. So you have to hold to a higher standard. You're held to a higher standard. Doesn't mean you can do whatever the heck you want. The world isn't ownerless. Yesh din v'yesh dayan. There's judgment and there's a judge. So how can I think I'm doing the right thing? Because we're delusional. You know, we get so caught up in our own ideas, we'll do whatever it takes to justify it. You know, can it be, you know, someone who's quote a rabbi, rely on things that no one should ever rely on and say, yeah, I got the authority to do it, when he doesn't. But at least they're doing this, at least they're doing that. But if no one relies on this and no one holds by it, you know, how are you allowed to do it? You can say, come on, you don't know anything. It's, you know, this is the way we do Jewish outreach over here. This is what's done. Okay. Is it right? No, it's not right. You know, and people have to realize you can't just do whatever you want and put it under this guise of, oh, for the sake of Kiruv, I can do it. You know, people walk a tightrope today. You know, doing things that are somewhat risque. And they may be successful. They may have a certain level of success. But who says I have to walk a tightrope? Who says that's okay? And the answer will be, God will understand. Look at all the self-sacrifice. I'm living in the middle of nowhere. You know, I'm trying to save people. It's a meritorious thing, I agree. You're saving people's lives, generations. Makes perfect sense. Except for one sort of small detail. And that detail is I call the shots. I'm the one in charge. I don't need to ask anybody else. Because look at the greater good that I'm doing. But you see, that greater good is not going to stand. You know, because in the end, what are you giving over? What are you telling people? Right? You're telling people, yeah, we can rely on this, we can rely on that. And you make people mediocre at best. That's why everybody, the Mishnah Perkei Avos says, right, the ethics of our fathers tells us, Aseh lecha Rav. You got to make someone your Rav. Your Rebbe. Some of the commentaries say explain. Even if you mean you have to pay them. Because you need guidance. Everybody needs guidance. And if you think you can do things on your own, you're mistaken. Because we all have biases. In other words, we want something to succeed, and we can't see outside of that. And we'll do whatever it takes to get there. And it might mean doing unscrupulous things. So let's say a person succeeds, he has a certain amount of success. But he did it in an unscrupulous way. So some people may say, okay, the ends justify the means. Wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do, but okay, this is the way it came out. But it worked. But the person's mistaken. Because the reality is, if you build a three-legged table, the table doesn't stand. Right? It comes down. It can't stand by itself. Because it's based on a lie. So you can say over here, okay, not as strong. Not necessarily based on a lie. We're not necessarily talking heresy 100%. But they're doing things that are not necessary. Either they're wrong, or they're not in the spirit of what Torah is. Now people have an issue with this. They say, well, pinpoint to me a verse that says it's forbidden. Let's say it isn't. Let's say it isn't, but people don't do it. It's not in the spirit of what the Torah says. Because I want to do it. Not saying you can't do it. But you now just open a Pandora's box. And now you rely on things you shouldn't rely on, and then it goes further. It doesn't just stop there. I want to do this and I want to do that, okay. But who says it's Torah anymore? Again, even if technically there's nothing wrong with it. Now a person would be very surprised to get upstairs after 120 years. And God says, you kept the Torah, but you were disgusting in my eyes. You relied on things you shouldn't rely on, did things you shouldn't have done. Doesn't matter what you thought the greater good was. I'm telling you, you shouldn't have done it. So then you say, there's no verse that says it's forbidden. That may be true. But again, there's integrity. If there's integrity, then it's not in the spirit of what God wants. If it's not in the spirit of what God wants, then it's forbidden. Doesn't matter what you rely on. What opinion or whoever. If it's not in the spirit, it's not a good thing. See, but looks are deceiving. Because the person will say, look at the greater good. Look what I just accomplished. How can you say it's bad? Because the base that you used is faulty. And if it's faulty, then it's not going to stand. It's not good. Even if it's not forbidden per se. Right? There's no verse that says it's forbidden. Doesn't mean I should do it. So we live in a very weak generation. We're doing whatever we can to try and bring people back. But it has to be done in the right way. And you cannot say, as we said before, God is going to understand. He's for sure going to understand because of look at everything I'm doing. Right? That's not true. Because if I do something that's not right, even though it had a positive effect, right? In the end, doesn't mean it's right. It just means, okay, he did the wrong thing. He permitted something he shouldn't have permitted. And then that had a positive result. Is that what we're shooting for? Is that what we're striving for? No. But a person has to be man enough, has to be big enough to say that if something's dodgy, something's controversial, ask a proper rabbinical authority, can I do this? Is there any leeway? If they say, yeah, this is the way you do it, fine. If they say no, it's back to the drawing board. Because we mentioned many times, the more you want to change the Torah and turn it into a pretzel, it's game over. It won't stick. It doesn't work. We want the Torah to be able to be passed down. But it has to be passed down in the right and proper way. That's why I speak about rabbinic authority. The most important thing they have to know about such a person, A, where they learned, and B, who their das Torah is. Who their rabbinical authority is that they go to. Because if they say they don't have, or they don't need, major red flag. Can't just do what you want. And in this weak generation, we think we're greater than we are. Compared to the masses, yeah, that may be true. In knowledge, etc. But doesn't give us the right. It doesn't give us the power to do things that aren't right. That go against what God wants, even if the end result is good. Right? That's the evil inclination coming. Saying, look what you accomplished. Look what you did. You did it in a backwards way. In a forbidden way, but it came out all right. That opens doors that you don't want to open. Right? And that's why everybody needs their proper rabbinical authority. And when it comes to Kiruv of doing Jewish outreach, you can't just do whatever you want. Right? You have to have your rabbinical authority who gives you guidance. Without guidance, then, the world is ownerless and people just do what they want. So, I'm going to stop there. Anyone has any questions, you can find me Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on Facebook. Send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com. I have conversion classes twice a week. I have question and answer session also twice a week, every Tuesday, Thursday, 10 o'clock in the morning, New York time, 5 o'clock Israel time. I have a class every Tuesday night, 9 o'clock New York time on Duties of the Heart. We are in Shar B'tachon, the gate of faith in God. Tremendously practical, certainly for today's generation. So anyone interested in any of that, send me an email or send me a text. Either at Beyond Orthodox Conversion Judaism on Facebook, or you can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wishing everyone a great Shabbos.